Today I'm going to turn one of my most popular drawings into a resin sculpture. I've got a thick sheet of MDF to use as a base, a printed reference, lots of cheap tin foil, and a tub of monster clay. If I sculpt Sticky entirely out of solid clay, she is going to weigh a ton. The best method that I found to reduce weight and cost is to use tin foil as an armature. Tin foil is obviously very cheap and you can get it at pretty much every single supermarket, and this is a common technique used by many sculpture artists, especially when creating large sculptures like this. Okay, let me give you a little background on who Sticky is. Sticky is a character that I drew in 2021. They're a blue character with a heart lollipop stuck in their hair. I do get the occasional comment asking me how did Sticky get the lollipop in their hair, and to be honest, I do not know. Maybe she's a messy eater? Right, I have made the tinfoil armature, so now I can start applying the clay. Monster clay, if you haven't heard of it before, is an oil-based modelling material, and it never cures or dries out. Sculpting a face is kind of like painting a picture. It's always pretty rough in the beginning, and you have to refine it as you go. Trusting the process is also very essential, because at the moment, she kind of looks like something you'd find in a cow field. Not to worry though, this can be fixed with a little bit of smoothing, shaping, and sculpting Sticky's face. My favourite clay tool for this sculpture was a regular spoon from my kitchen. The back of the spoon was perfect for smoothing and burnishing, and then the front of the spoon was great for scraping, so I could shape Sticky's jaw much easier. Sticky is looking a lot more like herself, so now we can add the thin and spiky details, like her eyebrows and eyelashes. But sculpting them directly onto Sticky's face without squishing them in the process might be very tricky, so I'm going to try a different method. Okay, shameless plug, I own an online store, and I pack a lot of my products in cellophane bags. Using one of these cello bags and placing it over my printed reference, I can trace Sticky's eyebrows and create a really quick sculpting guide that is super easy to use. Especially because monster clay is oil-based, it won't stick to the plastic, so I can sculpt them on, peel them off like a sticker, and stick them straight onto Sticky's head. This cello bag method worked so well that I'm going to repeat it for the lashes, pupils, hairline, and 2 tufts of hair. I think she's looking great, but I think she's missing something. Of course, we cannot forget Sticky's pink heart lollipop. This detail is arguably the most important, as it's literally why she's called Sticky. First, I need a slab of clay, so I'm using an old makeup container for this. After removing the clay from the container, I'm tracing a heart shape and cutting out the lollipop. I will say, this process is fairly self-explanatory. It's kind of the same way that you would make a lollipop in real life, except this one is clay and not chocolate, as a lot of people on my Instagram like to say. Now that I have a pretty tasty looking and definitely not chocolate lollipop, I'm going to attach these 2 tufts of hair that I made earlier. These little strands are simple, yet they really help to show that this lollipop is actually stuck in Sticky's hair. I actually really like these little tufts, I think they're pretty cool. But you want to know what else is cool? The fact that after some final smoothing and adding some extra little hair spikes, this clay sculpture of Sticky is now complete. After 3 months. 3 months sounds like a long time, but we're not even done yet. Like I said before, monster clay never dries, so I need to make a resin cast. Now I am a total beginner when it comes to this process, so after a lot of research, I found out that the easiest way to do this is to create a 2-part mould. One part is made of silicone, and the other part is made of resin and fiberglass, which is not so good for you. But anyway, I don't have a choice, so let's get started. Step 1. Prepare the sculpture by building a clay wall to catch excess silicone. Step 2. Mix up a batch of 2-part silicone and brush it all over the sculpture. Brushing instead of pouring these initial layers helps to capture all of the details that I have spent so long sculpting. Step 3. Repeat this step until all of the details have been fully coated. Step 4. Mix up a new, thicker batch of silicone and ice the sculpture like a cake. Thickening up the silicone is also very easy. There's this thing called silicone thickener. Who would have thought? And you add like a couple drops and it thickens up immediately. Step 5. Once this silicone cake looks nice and smooth, press some silicone keys onto the surface. These keys are very important because the resin fiberglass jacket that we'll be making next has to be held perfectly in place. I made these keys by pouring some silicone into just a spare pot and then cutting them up. Step 6. Mix up a batch of terrible, stinky, toxic resin and almost die from the fumes. Yeah, this was not a smart move from me. The resin literally had massive warning labels on the front. I had to open every single window to air out my entire house. It smelled that bad, and I've probably lost a few brain cells in the process. Step 7. Learn from your mistakes and set up outside. This step actually took much longer than I expected it to, thank you to lovely British weather. Step 8. Mix another batch of the terrible, stinky, toxic resin and paste squares of resin-coated fiberglass all over the cured silicone shape. If you want to copy what I'm doing here, please make sure you are wearing the appropriate PPE, including a mask and gloves, and preferably goggles. Step 9. Leave it in the garden shed to cure overnight. And finally, step number 10. Remove the jacket from the silicone and remove the silicone from the sculpture. This is the most satisfying thing ever. I did kind of damage my sculpture in the process, but it's nothing that can't be fixed. Now that I have my mold, I can create a simple slush cast using fast curing 2-part resin. And it turns out, not only am I great at almost dying from resin fumes, I am even more skilled at spilling resin everywhere when slush casting. 1 hour later, my slush cast has cured and it can be removed from the mold. And honestly, I am very impressed with how this turned out. It did take a few attempts to cast one that didn't look like it had been bonked on the head, but for my first attempt at making a sculpture, honestly, I am loving how this is turning out. I wish I had smoothed the clay out a bit more before making the mold, but it's nothing that primer and sandpaper can't fix. See? Nice and smooth. Now I can finally start painting, and this is my absolute favorite part of the process. In my local model shop, I managed to find this specific shade of blue Vallejo model paint. This will be Sticky's skin tone. It's close enough, it's not perfect, but using a pre-mixed colour when building up layers is great because it means that I don't have to remix this specific blue every single time. Now that Sticky's giant eyeballs have been painted white, I can get to work on filling in her hair, pupils, lashes, eyebrows, and lips. It kind of feels like a paint by numbers project. Also, if you're wondering where my paintbrushes are from, these ones are very cheap and they're from Amazon. I'm a sucker for cheap art supplies, and a higher cost doesn't always mean better quality. Sticky has been fully painted and she's looking pretty accurate to the drawing so far, but again, there is something missing. We need to make her heart-shaped lollipop. I'm not going to go into depth about the mold making of this section because, to be honest, I didn't really do it very well. I used the clay lollipop that we made earlier and I put it in a pot and I poured silicone inside. And that is it. So the silicone is cured, I can remove the clay lollipop and I can mix up a batch of clear resin this time. This clear resin cures way slower than the previous resin, but this is kind of a good thing because I can tint the resin pink before it cures. So that is exactly what I did. Then all I need to do is pour in the resin, wait for it to cure and remove it. And to be honest, I'm kind of impressed. This looks very similar to the drawing. And since I used clear resin, I can simply add the stick and you can see it from the front. After gluing the lollipop stick in place so it won't come out, I can paint the tufts of hair using the same hair colour as the main sculpture, and I can add a thin layer of gloss. This gloss is going to varnish the surface and make the lollipop stick inside 10 times more visible. Now, I didn't really know what glue to use. The only one I had on hand that I thought would work the best is hot glue, so that's what I used. After adding some picture wire in the back with some expanding glue, Sticky is finally complete. When I started this project, I think I severely underestimated how long it would actually take. This was such a labour of love for me. Sticky is one of my favourite illustrations that I've ever made. I will say though, after staring at a sad blue face for 6 months, it is all I can see in my dreams. Anyway, thank you so much for watching until this point. I'm still getting used to doing voiceovers for videos, so let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if I could improve anything or change anything, and yeah, I'll see you in the next video.